Okay. It said recording in progress, so we heard it. All right. So let's read the Dvar Machshava on 259. Page 259, it says as follows. And this comes from Kiva Rabinowitz, the Rebbe of Porisov Chassidut. Never heard of that Chassidut before. Gives an insight. He says as follows. On Shabbat, a person can have the schut to get le'or haketer, to get the light of the divine crown. When a person reflects on the essence of his faith, how can he not feel joy on Shabbat? As we enter and absorb Shabbat, fulfilling the verse, Beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti le'olam, this is our covenant with Hashem. On Shabbat, everything is clear. There is light without any barriers. A person can clothe himself in this light. This is the meaning of the verse that it says, remove the filthy garments from upon him and put on fine garments. But this can only happen if one is not distracted from Shabbat. One must pray to merit the light of Shabbat and fully immerse himself in the great illumination of Shabbat. The light of Shabbat shines when a person observes the holy Shabbat. He's connected to its holiness. And this way, he'll get to the crown of the light on Shabbat. I just want to mention as a side note, I've noticed many times that the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, will make it you so busy on Friday, and give you problems that you don't have the rest of the week on Friday. Why does he do that? He does it to you so you shouldn't come into Shabbat with calm, with peace, to enjoy Shabbat. He wants to keep you busy and on your toes so you're distracted when Shabbat comes in. Sometimes the whole week the work goes good. Friday is a problem. All of a sudden, this guy complains, that guy complains, this complains, that happens, this happens, that happens. On Friday, Satan is working extra hard so you don't come into Shabbat peaceful. Because you know if you come into Shabbat peaceful and you come in with a good mind, you're going to be zochet to get a lot more Kedusha come into you. And so he works this way to mess it up. Shalom bayit, business problems, that problem, something so you cannot walk in. So now that a person knows, what does he do? Anytime you have something go wrong on Friday, you say, Satan, I know what you're doing. You cannot mess me up. Don't let it affect you. Because Be'emet, what's going to happen? Shabbat comes, you cannot do anything about the problem anyway. Gone. Whether if it's a business problem, this problem, that problem, you can't do anything. The only thing you can do is either enjoy Shabbat or let your Shabbat be distracted. So here he says, it's very important not to be distracted. This way you can tap in to the special light of Shabbat by coming into Shabbat undistracted and in Shabbat with your full being. And now we're going to start the halacha on page 221. On page 221, Rabotai, we're now officially in the fifth shir, the fifth topic in the Tzurba Rabbanon, the Lax Family Edition, the Miras Family Volume. And we already saw about making a ohel. We saw about cleaning fabrics. We saw about stitching and unstitching, sewing and unsewing. We saw about tying and untying. And now we're coming to Kotev and Mochek, of writing and erasing on Shabbat, which has a lot of practical applications on Shabbat. For example, if the window is all foggy, can I put something on there? Can I write in the ear? Can I write on someone's back with my finger? I have a cake. Can I cut the cake? There's letters on it. Can I not cut the cake? How should I cut it? A lot of people put the happy birthday on the chocolate or on a cookie separate from the cake. What's going on? Why are all these things happening? Let's start off. Source number 1 on page 221. And it's a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat. It's the 12th parak, Mishnah 3. in our Gemara in Talmud Bavli can be found on Kuf Gimel Omid Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Hakotev Shete Otiyot. Someone writes 2 letters. Okay, we're talking here about the deoraita. A person is chayav the chatat if he did it b'shogeg, and chayav skila if he did it on purpose. What is the deoraita malacha that a person is chayav chatat for? Is hakotev shete otiot. He has to write 2 letters. Now, where was this done in the Mishkan? We said everything that's done, all the 39 malachot were done in the Mishkan. So where was this done in the Mishkan? So says Rav Tzion. What about it? Okay, very good. So what happened was when you took down and rebuilt the Mishkan, every time they traveled from one place to the other place, they had to put the beams back in the same place. The walls, the beams, the curtains, everything has to be put back in the same place because you don't go down in Kiddusha, you only go up in Kiddusha. So if you take one that used to be right over here and now you take it and put it in the back, right? The wall that's by the Aron HaKodesh, you take the wall and you move it to the back, you can't do that. You have to keep everything in its right place. So they had to mark it down, like some people have on the sukkah, right? On the sukkah, some people, when they put up the panel sukkahs, so they write on the sukkah, this is 1, 2, 3, and they have the order that it goes around. So that's where the writing was done. A letter was written on each of the beams for this purpose. So says the Mishnah, continuing the Mishnah, you have to write 2 letters. The Mishnah says, Ben bimino, ben bismolo. Doesn't make a difference if he's writing it with his right hand or he's writing it with his left hand. Why should it not make a difference? We have to think about that for a second. We'll ask this question because usually we say if you do something with a shinui, something with a change from the normal way of doing it, right? So then it's not going to be chayav chatat. It's not going to be d'oraita. It's going to be d'rabbanan. So why are we saying ben b'mino, ben b'smolo? So we'll have to see that in the Gemara. Then it says ben mi. What do you have next? Ben mishem echad, ben mishtei shemot. Whether of 1 character or of 2 characters. Meaning if I wrote the same letter twice, Aleph Aleph, or I wrote Bet Bet, or I wrote Aleph Bet, or I wrote Gimel Dalet, doesn't make a difference. As long as there's 2 letters, whether it's the same letter or a different letter. Ben Mishem Echad Ben Mishtei Shemot, Ben Mishtei Samaniyot, whether with 2 inks, okay? Whether I use 2 types of inks. I use 1 ink, green, 1 blue, 1 red, 1 yellow. Different types of, they used to make a formulation of the ink with different ingredients. Okay, so the different ingredients of the formulation of the ink doesn't make a difference. There's 2 letters there. Then says the Mishnah, Bechol Lashon, in any language, which simply means writing 2 letters in any language, whether it be Chinese, English, or Russian, or Hebrew. Bechol Lashon, Hayav, he would be liable. So that is the chayav chatat, that is chayav skila did on purpose, is in this case, is where he wrote 2 letters, any 2 letters, in any language. Simply that's what the Mishnah says. Continues. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Lo chivu shtei otiyot el mishum roshem. 1 second, says Rabbi Yossi. We're not saying that the malacha is kotev, of writing. Rabbi Yossi wants to say there's a different melacha, not kotev, but rather roshem. What's roshem? Roshem is making a mark. Rabbi Yossi wants to say it's not writing intelligent letters and coherent letters, but rather it's making marks, any marks. That's what he wants to say. Lo chivu shtei otiyot el mishum roshem. Shikach kotvin al karshei mishkan. Leda ezo ben zugo. So he wants to say that it's not the letters itself that's the problem. It's not the writing of the letters, but rather it's making marks with something, and it makes a mark. That is the malacha of Roshem and not Kotev. However, we know we have the malacha of Kotev. We don't have the malacha of Roshem. Malacha of Roshem would be a tolda of Kotev for us. But let's take a look at the Rambam. How the Rambam understands this Mishnah. The Rambam, in his Pirish Mishnayot, in source number 2, he writes as follows: Rabbi Yossi Omer koitev shtei otiyot einu chayim mishum koitev el mishum roishem v'roishem etzlem avot malachot. Roishem itself is one of the avot malachot. Kivan Shayab Mishkan, right? Because you need to put one beam next to the other beam. There were 20 beams, so you have to write them. So Kotvin al Rishon mitzad Echad Aleph, Sheni Bet, V'kein Kulam, Ad Acharon Kotv Alav Chaf. So the Rambam understands Rabbi Yossi that he wants to say Roshem is its own melacha, and there's no kotev, but rather there is Roshem, marking, seeming with not an indent. It's a good question. So what do you understand marking being? Symbols. He wants to say he means symbols. Right. So I think what he's trying to say, incoherent stuff. It's not an A, it's not a B, it's not an alpha, it's not a beta, it's not an alpha, it's not a beta. I made some sign, right?
You have Chinese letters. You have to go make like 25 things to get one letter.
Right. Is it a letter or a word? The different
word,
symbols. Okay. Right. So he wants to say it's a symbol, not a letter. That's what he wants to say. Okay. However, the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat, take a look at source number 3, Hilchot Shabbat 11:17, says the Rambam, Roshem Toledot Kotevhu. It is a tolda of writing. So making marks, making symbols is a tolda of writing. Writing is writing letters, and making symbols is a tolda of that. What is an example of this? One who makes markings or forms on a wall or with red color, and like the artists do, right? He's liable for the tolda of kotev. That is the tolda. So Rambam spells it out. What is Roshem? Roshem is making with ink symbols, signs, marks, and stuff like that.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4,
Yeah. That would be a symbol. That would be it. Yeah, that would be Roshem according to the Rambam. Okay. So we have here the Mishnah is quite clear, and we have the psak from the Rambam. The malacha of kotev is when you write 2 letters. Any marks? That's a tolda. So the Gemara is going to ask. 1 second. Look at the Gemara in source number 4. Bishlema ayamin lechayev. You told me in the Mishnah whether he writes with his right hand or he writes with his left hand, he's chayav chatat. I understand the writing with the right hand because mishum the derech ketiva v'chach. That's how you write. You use your right hand. Most people in the world use their right hand to write. So if I write with my right hand, that's the way of doing the malacha. That's your chayav chatat. Fine. Ela asimo amai. But why should the Mishnah say that if I write with my left hand, I'm also going to be chayav? That's a shinui. You ever write with you? If a person is a true writing and he writes with his left hand, you ever try writing? I'm sure everybody tried writing with their left hand. It comes out maybe sometimes hard to decipher what I try to write. So it's a shinui. It's a real shinui. So why would I be chayav? Why would the Mishnah say I'm chayav? So right, but you wouldn't be chayav chatat. Right, it'd be part of our right. But why do we say it's chayav as if it's the actual malacha? So what is the answer over here? So Amar Abaya wants to say we're talking about it. He's skipping a couple of lines in the Tzurba. We'll skip those lines. Amar Abaya, what is he talking about? Bisholet b'shtei yadav. The Mishnah is talking about a guy who's ambidextrous. He can write with 2 hands. There's some people that they have that ability to write with 2 hands. So Beyamin or small, it's chayav chatat because that's his derech ketiva. That's his derech of. Right. According to Abaya right now. And then the Gemara gives another answer. And the other answer is as follows. Rabbi Yaakov, Beredevat Yaakov Amar. Rabbi Yaakov, the son of the daughter of Yaakov, said, Hi, Mani, who is the author of this Mishnah that said with your left hand, you're also Hayav? Rabbi Yosehi the Amar. This is Rabbi Yossi who's saying it. What did Rabbi Yossi say? Lo chivu shte otiot el mishum roshem. You're only mechai because you make a mark, right? So if it's because of roshem, then it doesn't make a difference if I make it with my right hand or my left hand. The whole problem is, according to Rabbi Yossi, is making a mark. And with my left hand, I also make a mark. And as such, you're going to be chayav chatat. But the Gemara's question here is, though, The Tzurba doesn't bring it. The Gemara's question is, but 1 second, you can't say that it's Rabbi Yossi if it says the Mishnah anonymous and then it says Omer Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara says, no, the truth is the whole Mishnah is actually Rabbi Yossi. Okay, so the Gemara said, here we have, like Rav Tzion said, that the Tanakama argues with Rabbi Yossi. Which means is that if a person writes with his left hand, that's not the Doraita. Right? If he's weak in the left hand, and that's not the Doraita. It's not Chayav Chatat. It is Potter Ablasser. Right? It's a Derabanan. So that is the halacha. But there's one exception to this. No, one exception, but there's a main exception to this. Look at the Orchot Shabbat. The Orchot Shabbat says, Kotev otiyot al yudei chotemet. Okay? Someone is printing letters using a stamp. Okay? So you use a stamp. What do you do with a stamp? You take the stamp, press it down, and it comes a bunch of letters there. Does it make a difference if I use my right hand or I use my left hand when I use a stamp? Absolutely not. So it says Orchot Shabbat, even if he does it with his left hand, right? Because it's easy to use it with its left hand, right? When we say, when the malacha of a hotza'ah, taking out, we say it doesn't matter if you're taking it out on your elbow, you're taking it out on your head. As long as you're carrying it, you're carrying it. The same thing over here. When we were saying writing it with your left hand, your potter avalasser, that's when you're actually writing it and it doesn't come out right. It's like a real shinoi. But when you're using a stamp, there's no shinoi there. I stamp it with my right hand, I stamp it with my left hand, I stamp it with my foot. It's all going to be the same. I put the stamp in my mouth and I go down on it. It's the same thing. It comes out the same. It's that is the ktiva of putting it down to the paper. Says the Penina Halacha, in source number 6. He says the same thing is true with a printer and a photocopier and a fax machine. Okay, not typing it onto a screen. Talking about pressing the button to print, right? Doesn't make a difference. I press the button to print with my right hand. Doesn't make a difference if I press the button to print with my left hand, or I press it with my nose. All of it makes it print, and it prints legibly and nicely and everything. So that's going to be the same isser. He wants to say the Penini Halacha. Take a look at this in the Yalkut Yosef outside the Tzurba for a moment. The Yalkut Yosef in the English edition on page 205 in the 3rd volume of Shabbat, he says as follows. He says, Halacha 20. If someone types onto a paper using a typewriter, he writes it with his left hand, right? If he writes with his left hand, that's one thing. But if he writes on a typewriter with his left hand, then it doesn't make a difference. It's the same ither. Why? Because there's no shinoi. I have to just press the letter. Whether I press it with my right hand, press it with my left hand. The whole shinoi is when its left hand is weak and it's not coming out right. Here, the typewriter, the printer, the photocopier, it's all the same. Doesn't make a difference which hand. So that's the thing. For example, if I go into an elevator and I have to press a button on Shabbat, right? You have to do it with a shinoi. Pressing with your left hand is not considered a shinoi. It has to be pressed with something entirely different. That's not the way it's normally pressed. Because I can press my right, left. There's no difference. I type all the time with right and left. So that is not a shinoi enough. It has to be a legit shinoi. So that's what they're saying over here.
Doesn't matter what you're going to do. The outcome is the same.
Right. To an extent. There is a shinoi with what I do and the result of it, and it could be. So for here, for the elevator, what do they say to do if you have to press the elevator button? No, elbow. Right, it's not really. Right. So you're saying the result. There's a machloket poskim. How do you look at it? The shinoi in the action or shinoi in the result? There is. But here we're saying that pressing the left with the left button is not a shinoi of an action. It's not even a shinoi. According to those who say shinoi in action is not, this is not a shinoi in action, pressing it with the left. With the left hand. Okay. Take a look in the laws of Shabbat. He writes as follows on these halachot. He writes, he says the same thing, using a stamp, right? Doesn't make a difference whether one uses left hand or right hand, and it's the same thing with a typewriter. You want to say the exact same thing. Just let's review the protocol of this halakha. When one writes two letters with one's right hand, is the Issa d'Oraita. Writing one letter is the Issa d'Rabbanan. A person whose left hand is the same as his right hand to write, so then he can be chayav even with the left hand. Here he writes, and this is what I was saying, even one who does not have any hands, the person with no hands. The person has no hands now. So how does he normally write? He writes with his mouth or in a different manner, can violate the malacha of kotev when writing in the usual manner that he writes. So he wants to say that if it's his own usual way, even though it's not the derech of the olam to write with his mouth, to put stamps with his mouth, but that's his usual way of doing it, he could be chayav d'oraita for doing that. Okay, but the left hand, right hand, that was a good point to pick up on. Left hand, right hand are definitely going to be considered the same thing. Okay, moving on to the next section. What about non-permanent writing? What does that mean? Right. So we have a lot of times, we said about a lot of the melachot, we said already, is it permanent? Is it going to last like the knot? Is it going to last the whole Shabbat? It's going to last 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, right? There's a difference if it's going to last or not going to last. We have that halakha. So let's take a look when it comes to writing. We're in source number 7, and this is the Gemara, this is the Mishnah, Masech Shabbat, Mishnah Dalet and Hey, and it's found in our Gemaras in Masech Shabbat on Daf Kuf Dalet Amud Aleph. Okay, on Daf Kuf Dalet Amud Aleph, it says as follows. Kuf Dalet Amud Bet. All right, here's the Mishnah. Okay. Says the Mishnah. Katav bidyo besam besikra bekomes kan kanutom. Whether he wrote in ink, with paint, with red pigment, right? The sikra. We saw that on Shabbat also. We had the animals that came out of the pen, right? They had to mark it with sikra, with the red ink, or the red pigment. Or he writes with gum, or he writes with copper sulfate. Uchol davar shuhu roshem, or with anything that leaves a mark. So all those you michayav d'oraita because leaving a mark. Al shnei kotle zaviot. He writes on 2 corners, but the 2 corners can be read together. Okay, so here's the 2 corners. He's writing right here and here. 1 letter here, 1 letter there. But since I can read the 2 letters in one shot, that's the Issa d'oraita. V'al shnei lavchei pinkas, and if he writes on 2 tablets of a ledger, so they're next to each other, v'hen negin ze'im zeh, and they're read together, haya. Okay, that's Mishnah Dalet. Fine. Mishnah Hey, and also says if he writes on his skin, also says Mishnah Hey. Katav b'mashkin, if he writes with juice, with liquid, b'mei perot, with fruit juice, or he writes ba'avak derachim, with dust of the roads, ba'avak hasofrim, with scribes' dust, uvchol davar she'eno mitkayem, or he writes with anything that doesn't last, right? Then what? Patur. Patur meaning potter. But it's the Rabbanan now. Why? Enu mitkayemet. It's not lasting. It's not lasting. It's not the oraita. Okay? And then continues. If he writes it, achat ba'aretz, he writes achat ba'aretz va'achat ba'korah. 1 letter on the ground and 1 letter on the beam. 1 here, 1 there, he writes. Or he writes, Katav al shnei chotlei habayit, 2 separate walls of the house. Al shenei dafei pinkas. He writes in 2 columns of a ledger. Ve'en nehegin ze im ze. But they cannot be read together. Pater, aval asur. So all those are going to be rabbinic. So what do we see over here? We see 2 dinim from this Mishnah. What do we see? Number 1, if it's not lasting, it's derabanan. And we see if it's not 2 letters together, it's also derabanan. So 1 letter is derabanan.
Other side, one letter here on the different one different view.
So it must be that they wrote it together, two letters.
Then you put it together. That's the whole point was.
So you put 2 beams together, you can read them 2 together. That's the Sodoraita. If it could be read together, then it's a Doraita. Even if it's on 2 separate walls, 2 separate beams. If it can be read together, that's a Doraita. If it cannot be read together, then it's a Doraita.
I'm able to read it or writing 2 letters.
You're writing 2 letters. But if you write 2 letters, write 2 letters together. If I write 1 letter here and I write 1 letter on the wall, that's the Rabbanah. I didn't write 2 letters together. 2 letters together, but together can mean that I can be read together. That's what together means. Okay. Now, the real question here is, what does it mean? If the Mishnah said, it doesn't last. What does it mean, mitkayem, enu mitkayem? What does it mean, last and doesn't last? What's the time frame? What's the definition? Mitkayem, no mitkayem. What is this? What's the time frame? Forever, not forever, for 1 day, for 24 hours. What's meant mitkayem or not? Long time. Okay, so what does it mean? So actually, the Mishnah in the beginning of this parak, in parak 12, the Mishnah says an interesting concept, and we have this a lot of times. What does the Mishnah say? Zeh haklal. Take a look at source 8 on page 224. Zeh haklal. Kol ha'oseh melacha u'melachto mitkayemet. Anyone who performs labor and his labor endures, b'Shabbat, chayav. He is liable. So if you do a malacha on Shabbat, which will last, okay, so you're reading it meaning lasting on Shabbat. So you're reading as follows. Anyone who does a malacha and it lasts on Shabbat, he's chayav. And that, by the way, is source number 11. That's the way the Rambam understands this line in the Mishnah. Says the Rambam, or at least the Chachamim want to understand the Rambam this way. Says the Rambam, take a look at source number 11. Klal kagoin shavir sarak. He puts the clay or vermilion to iron to brass and colors it. There he's going to be potter. Now here he goes. If anything doesn't last on Shabbat, potter. So according to the Rambam, it has to last on Shabbat.
So you evaporated 3 hours before Shabbat over, I'm not saying.
Ina chayav deoraita. That's correct. According to the Rambam, it has to be lasting on Shabbat. However, the Rashi doesn't learn it this way.
Yes, again, there's no time.
Rashi learns as follows.
Maybe I wrote it 1 hour before Shabbat over.
Look what Rashi says. Rashi says, when it says the word Shabbat, you have to put it at the beginning of the sentence. As follows. Zeh haklal. Kol ha'oseh melacha b'Shabbat u'melachto mitkayemet forever, then he's chayav. Rashi's taking the word Shabbat and putting it earlier in the sentence, not at the end. The way you understand like the Rambam has to last on Shabbat. Rashi says no. Rashi says when it says b'Shabbat ha'oseh melacha kai. It's talking about doing the melacha. When I do a malacha on Shabbat, it has to be a malacha that lasts a very long time. Not that it lasts on Shabbat. Rather, the malacha on Shabbat has to last a very long time, which is a huge time difference if you think about it. Right? The Rambam has to be lasting on Shabbat. According to Rashi, no. Whatever you do on Shabbat has to last a very long time, and if it doesn't, it's going to be the Rabbanan. So take a look at the Shar Hatzion, the Mishnah Berurah. He states as follows: that we require that the melacha lasts in order to bring the sin offering. We establish that for the library, we require that one specifically writes substance that lasts. But the Mishnah says, anyone that melacha nachtor k'yem Shabbat chayav mashu l'chorda filu im mitkayemet rak al yom Shabbat l'chod v'chein mashma l'nodati b'Rambam. Says the Mishnah Berurah, we always think you have to have something that lasts forever, but that's not what the Rambam says. As long as it lasts on Shabbat. What it says that he's exempt with liquids and fruits, juice, and stuff like that. That means it doesn't. You're learning that the Rambam, when he talked about fruit juice and stuff like that, it meant that the fruit juice doesn't even last Shabbat. It's right away. You read it and it's gone. It's disappearing ink. Right? Disappearing ink. Come here, I'm gone. That's what we're talking about, says according to the Rambam. Right? But Rashi, he says, when it says Shabbat, it goes on to doing the malacha. In Kemashma Mineg, the Be'in Shemit Kayem Tamid. The Lord died by Yom Shabbat Lechod. And it's not enough that it just lasts on Shabbat. It has to last for many days, according to Rashi. So you have here huge machloket, Rashi and Rambam. How do you understand permanence? Mitkayemet. According to the Rambam, Mitkayemet means Shabbat. It lasts on Shabbat. According to Rashi, whatever you do on Shabbat, in order to be chayav for, it has to last a pretty long time. Say again?
Doesn't say a time for Rashi.
A long time. A long time. Yeah. Whenever we're talking about a malacha mitkayemet, it means it's lasting. It's going to be the Rabbanan, that's for sure. Yeah. That's going to be, it's Asur. Yeah, but so it's definitely Asur the Rabbanan. Even according to the Rambam. Yeah. Okay. So a practical application of this. Rabbi Eliezer Malam in Pnei Halacha writes as follows, and we'll see it also in the Yalkut Yosef. He writes as follows: to make a summary. If a person is in a pekuach nefesh situation, and he has to sign on Shabbat in the hospital, and the hospital says we have to do this procedure to save the life, but you have to sign here on the dotted line, right? We can't do it without consent. We have to have your signature here. He should preferably use a Shabbat pen. Lichtov be'et Shabbat. What's a Shabbat pen?
I have Shabbat mind.
Shabbat pen was a pen that the ink disappears after a while.
What good is it then?
What good is it that you signed it? They have proof that it was signed, photocopy, whatever else, and later on they can redo it afterwards. But it doesn't last for a long time. So what happens now? You bumped it from a deoraita down to the Rabbanan. So it's pekuach nefesh. So it's easier to do it. Even with a Shabbat pen, it's proper to write using a shinui if possible. When a Shabbat pen is not available, one may write or type it as needed, but in cursive script and using a shinui when possible. So this Shabbat pen lasted less than 24 hours. The ink is there for less than 24 hours. So what? A pencil, you think, because it could be erased. It's a writing. Well, I said it's a writing. It can last a very long time unless I personally come and erase it. We're talking about something that erases on its own. Right. It's erasing on its own. So halacha, the Yalkut Yosef outside the Tzurba for a moment. Yalkut Yosef brings the same halacha regarding using the Shabbat pen or the special disappearing ink pen. He writes as follows. The doctor treats desperately ill people on a regular basis. And he's talking about the doctor himself. The doctor, by the way, becoming a doctor comes with, you have to have a vast knowledge of halacha, especially Hilchot Shabbat, because a lot of times they're forced to work on Shabbat and they have to take care of a lot of people. And you have to document part of what you do. So how do you go about doing it? Not that easy. The doctor treats desperately ill people on a regular basis, and he must write down the patient's statistics and instructions on Shabbat. It's a violation of all that he use a pen filled with ink that disappears by itself after a couple of days. Okay? The Pnei Halacha meant disappearing less than 24 hours, which is the Rambam. And here he writes, disappearing after a couple of days. I guess this is more of Rashi Shita, as long as it doesn't last for a long time, so even after a couple of days. Likewise, soldiers and security personnel who must write things on Shabbat for security reasons should use such ink, disappearing ink, that will not last for a long time. The idea is to bump it down. You don't want it to be a doraita, to bump it down to the Rabbanan by using a disappearing ink. Right, so then they can rewrite it, they can photocopy, whatever else they need to do afterwards, whatever you have to do. Whatever you have to do afterwards is afterwards. The time I write it, it's written with ink that is not permanent. So it's going to be a derabanan. So I have to do it. But why should I do it and violate a doraita if I can violate only a derabanan? That's, you have to know where things are in halakha. So I'm assuming in Eretz Yisrael, I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming they don't have to use pens at all. I'm sure there they have a system around it. So when the religious person comes into the hospital, there's ways to do it. Technically, can you give a verbal consent, right? Can I say I agree to something? So more hospitals that cater to religious Jews would know the restrictions of Shabbat, and they would take your verbal consent and come back to you Motzei Shabbat to get it signed, right? They'll say, okay, now we agreed, and everyone's there. They'll get witnesses to hear you agree, and then they'll come back Motzei Shabbat to get it signed. It's probably what they do in Eretz Yisrael, and it's probably what they do in religious hospitals such as Mamana and other hospitals like that. But if you're going to a hospital that doesn't deal with religious Jews, and all of a sudden this religious Jew shows up there, they're going to say, what verbal consent? You're going to say yes now. 2 minutes later, you're going to say no, and then you're going to sue us. So they're going to make you sign. So what do you do there? And I'm sure they don't have disappearing ink pens in the inkwell there waiting for you to sign with. So then you would have to sign with the shinui as much as possible. But never let, if it's a real case of pekuach nefesh, life and death, then don't let anything stop you from signing it and save the person's life. What you have to do in order to save the person. You could do it with the shinui. That would be preferable over doing it with regular. Okay, fine. Moving on. Okay. Says the Shulchan Aruch in source 14. One must be careful not to write in liquids on a table or in ashes using one's finger. So if you have some ashes there, you have some water there, you cannot make letters in them. Okay? Says the Ramah, Aval mutar l'roishem be'aver yamin otiyot. You can go in the ear and you can make letters. What does that mean? I can make an A like this. I can make a B. I can make an aleph. I can make a bet. In the ear is not a problem. Why? There's no marking. There's no nothing happening. It's just me doing it in the ear. He says as follows in the Yalkut Yosef. Outside for a second. It's a permissible on Shabbat to describe letter shapes in the air with one's finger in order to give a silent message to a friend. Likewise, one may believe one is writing with a finger on the table in the view of someone who reads the imaginary letters. I'm allowed to go like this on the table. Did I make any letter here? Zilch, nothing's here. Mutar, you can do that. Someone once asked me, they play this game sometimes, these kids play this game, nothing to do, so they play with each other. One person sits against the other person's back, and on their back, they're writing letters. Oh, do you know which letter I wrote? Mutar, it's not a problem at all in Shabbat. There's not Rosh, there's no marking, there's no letter there. That's going to be permissible. But so we'll talk about scratching into the paper. I don't know if we get into we might get into it today. I have to see where we're going to get up to. But says the Shmir Shabbat Kil Chata. What about if you have a window that has a condensation on it? It gets foggy, right? Writing or drawing any pattern in the condensation is going to be forbidden. Why? Because it lasts for a little bit. Something's there, right? That's going to be asur. That's going to be the Rabbanan.
Why? What basis?
No, even according to Rashi and the Rambam, something that's temporary, even if it's temporary for a little bit, it's going to be also the Rabbanan. It's also the Rabbanan. The question by Rashi and the Rambam is what's considered the Raita? Mitkayem the whole Shabbat, or has to be for a really long time, right? But temporary is also according to everyone is also the Rabbanan. Say again? Yeah, but drying the condensation. So I have there all this liquid, and I want to dry the window so I can see. I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to dry it, but I have to make sure that no one put any letters on it, because then I'm going to be erasing a letter, right? So if I just want to dry the window, that would be okay. So the Mishnah Berurah now brings some of the halachot about what we just learned. So let's go through the Mishnah Berurah. Number one who writes on page 226, source 16, Aleph. One who writes is only liable if he writes with a substance that makes a lasting mark. To be chayav d'oraita, it has to last there. Similarly, one is liable if he writes on a surface on which the writing lasts. It has to be a surface that it lasts. But one who writes with a substance whose mark does not last, that's pater of a losser. Okay? Someone writes on his flesh with an ink. It's considered chayav because ink on your flesh lasts a while. It doesn't just disappear, it lasts a while. Although the heat of the flesh removes the writing after time, this is similar to writing that gets erased. But one who scratches a form of writing onto his flesh is exempt because if you're going to etch into your hand the writing, that's a shinui. Therefore, it's not chayav chatat, it's still also. One who writes is only liable to bring a single offering if he writes 2 letters. But if he writes 1 letter, even if it's the size of 2 letters, I wrote this huge A, all right, huge Aleph, the big Aleph, right? Still, you're going to be, it's pater of a losser. Nevertheless, even writing 1 letter is biblically forbidden. Okay, so that's you're not going to be chayav chatat, says the Mishnah Berurah. That's the machloket of some poskim. But he wants to say that even writing 1 letter, even though you're not chayav chatat, it's still also the right. If one completed a sefer Tanakh by writing 1 letter, then he is chayav chatat because he did a complete action. That which you said one is liable for writing 2 letters, even if the word was not formed. I just wrote Aleph Gimel. There's no word there. Still, one who writes with his left hand, with his back of his hand. He holds his pen with his fingers turned over his hands and writes. So I put like this. I put the pen over here, and I'm writing like this. I'm holding the pencil this way. Okay? With his foot, mouth, or elbow, he's pater of a losser. Right? Nevertheless, writing with one's foot is similar forbidden. If a left-handed person writes with his right hand, which is the same as the right writing with his left hand, pater of a losser. Someone who writes with both hands is always going to be chayav, no matter which hand he's going to use. One who makes marks or forms on a wall with red color, or like the artists do, he makes some sort of marks with ink on a wall or on the canvas. It says wall. Okay, we'll stick with wall. This is a tolda of Kotev, and he's reliable in one form on a keli, so he's finishing up the keli. This is going to be the malacha of Makav because he's finishing up the work. Okay, so it comes out that is the dinim from the Mishnah Berurah. I'm just looking at laws of Shabbat really quick on this laws. Page 84 here in my book. All right. Again, let's go through these halachot so we get them clear. On a biblical level, on a d'oraita level, only writing that lasts on an enduring surface is forbidden, such as regular ink or pencil on paper or parchment. Even though the writing does not last forever, such as writing that is written with a pencil, it suffices that it should last for a considerable period of time for it to be considered a lasting inscription. So it has to last for a significant amount of time. No one's really giving us a cutoff of what it means significant amount of time. If you want to compare it to time, maybe 30 days, but it lasts a significant amount of time. Fine. Writing that does not last is derabanan. Writing with a colored beverage that fades quickly. Drawing letters or figures on the condensation on the window or fogged object, such as a window or glass. Drawing figures in moist sand. You go into the sand and you write a letter. You go to the beach and you go and you write in the sand. It's going to be there, but then it's going to disappear. That's going to be derabanan. Drawing or making figures in or out of snow. Going into the snow and writing. As also this is derabanan. It's permitted to draw letters or symbols in the air or by moving one's finger on a dry surface, since one is not actually writing anything.
You're working with your foot.
Engraving. That's It is permitted to walk on snow or mud with shoes that have words protruding on the bottom of the shoe. Even though the bottom of the shoe will imprint words as one is walking on the snow or the mud. Why is this allowed? Several reasons. Number one, the writing is not permanent. Two, the writing is done in an unusual manner. Three, one does not need the malacha that's being done, right? It's I'm not planning to do this.
Maybe I want to mark.
One does not care about this malacha.
I want to mark that walking.
Yeah, okay. You want to mark it. But for those reasons, it would be permissible. Writing on one's skin, the pen or a marker is considered kotev, even though the ink will eventually fade because he sweats or he's washing or other things like that, shedding of the skin. Still, that is the malacha of kotev, and person should do because it does last some time. Okay.
We learned in the past that it might be issue if you have those shoes that the print, then the word.
I just read it was not an issue. Hazon Ovadia, Yibio Omer, Maor Israel, Halichot Olam, all of them give several different reasons, and it's permitted to walk on snow or mud with shoes that have words protruding on the bottom of the shoe, even though the bottom of the shoe will imprint words as one is walking on the snow or mud. There are those who say it's a problem. La halacha for us, not a problem. You can walk that way. Right? Okay. Now, writing on electronic displays. I'm typing, not printing. Printing we already saw. So they're all right, the issue. I'm typing, and it goes onto the screen. So there's letters now on the screen. There's two letters on the screen.
But what about
One second. If I leave that screen there, it'll stay there a long time. So is it kotev? Is it writing? Or is it not? How do you look at this? Take a look. Is it not permanent? Why is it not permanent? I send the text, right? The text stays in the phone. It's always there. Pick it up. Unless I delete it. I can erase anything I also. Why not? I can erase something. That's not. So let's take a look. Interesting question with some practical information is whether forming letters on an electronic display, is that a doraita or not? So first thing, forget Aish. We're talking about kotev. We're talking about writing. We don't care about Aish. So now the question is, you really have to understand how these images come onto the screen. That's the real question. How do they come on? So until the early 21st century, and someone can explain to me, I would appreciate it, but we'll read what he says here. The cathode ray tube was the most common electronic display. Okay, the technology used an electron gun to form images by firing electrons onto a phosphor-coated screen. Okay, so somehow there was an electron gun that was shooting down electrons, and that made images on the screen.
Did you ever see like a video camera taking a picture of the old style TV screens, the ones that had like a were not flat. They were
right. They're like
you see like flicker,
right.
flicker, because it's constantly writing. It has that. It basically takes. If it wants to write an A, it'll go like this, and it'll make a mark. It'll skip this part, and it'll do this. So fast you wouldn't be able to see it, but it's because it has like a special coating. Those coating is phosphor coating. It's kind of like what they use for the what's it called, fluorescent lighting. It's something like that. It was
okay. So now the question is, how do you apply this to halacha? Is that permanent? Is it staying there, or is it something that's continuously new? So says
it's constantly redrawing. The old style was constantly redrawing.
So again, see, the Shmat Abraham is going to agree with you on that, but the Shevet HaLevi of Wozner, he says no, it's permanent. In my humble opinion, regarding Shabbat, this is not only prohibited, but there's also a biblical liability. He wants to say that this is a Chiv D'Oraita, this is an Issa D'Oraita. Why? He says that this is my machshava, to put a letter on it, and the machshava that I have is niskayim. I want an A to be there. I don't care if it's keep coming new and new. The A is staying there. The A, B that I'm writing is staying there. I don't care if electrons are still coming, but my idea for A to be there is there, and therefore it should be a Isser D'Oraita. And he writes it's like you can't say it's just grumma. He said because when I do zarei and I throw the seeds and the wind comes and puts things and it comes out, I'm still chayav for that malacha, even though I didn't do it. The wind did it. right? So same thing here. Even though the electrons are still going, but my machshava was to make an AB on the screen. The AB is there, so he wants to see it as an Issa right. However, Nishmat Abraham Kotzer Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, shooting electrons, Yirei Shel Electronim, Ein Zer Choshev Min HaTorah Kosev. It's not considered writing. And his reasoning is because you keep getting new and new ones, right? And therefore it's not permanent. What about today's screens? Right? Today's he writes as follows. The same logic should apply to most modern displays, which use a uniform backlight and liquid crystals to filter the light. Again, I have no idea what I'm reading. I just know I pick up the phone and the screen works. That's it. I don't know how. I know they have crystal UHD and this and that. But anyway, some displays use technology known as electronic paper in order to better mimic standard writing. I was thinking that was like the Kindle, because that actually looks like paper. Here, electricity is used to arrange actual particles into the shape of letters, and perhaps it's more deoraita an issue of kotev when it comes to the Kindle. So when it comes to electronic paper,
That looks like paper.
yeah, it has the whole design of a Kindle is to make it look more like a book, make it feel like have more of a paper and ink type of feel. So he wants to say over here that perhaps the normal screens that we have, right, the is more like this machloket of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Wozner. Is it the right or not? And Shlomo Zalman said it's not. But when he says electronic paper, it seems to be more of an issue, and it might be more to issue because of its way that it's used.
So you're using it. You're not typing.
On top of 229 in the box. On top of 229.
If you type on electronic paper, if you know how to do that, saying some would do that, or if you read from electronic paper.
Well, you're typing, obviously. You're doing something. You're making the letters appear. Yeah, making letters appear. Okay, now let's get into another topic here. We had the Mishnah, and the Mishnah said, B'chol lashon. If I write the letters, what we understood at that time was in any language. Meaning if I write in Arabic, if I write in Hebrew, if I write in English, if I write in French, in Latin, whatever it is. If I write letters, B'chol lashon, that was the Doraita. That's what we understood from the Mishnah. However, the Raviyah, he wants to say, based on Yerushalmi, that the truth is, for to be mechuyev deoraita, for the malacha of kotev, it has to be either Hebrew, that we know the Hebrew script of today, right, the rich Hebrew script, or Greek. Okay? And he writes, for this reason, the Gemara elsewhere permits asking a non-Jew to write a bill of sale on Shabbat in order to purchase property in Eretz Yisrael, provided he does not use Ketav Ashurit or Yevanit. He doesn't use Greek or the modern day, the way we have our scrolls written in that form of Hebrew.
Or like the script.
Say what? Right.
Write a contract, buying the bill of sale,
So,
sales contract, of buying a property in Israel, even if it's on Shabbat.
right.
The language.
Right, 100%. Right now, we're trying to get into the idea of what's kotev, what's considered writing. We said b'chol lashon in the Mishnah. The Rabbi wants to say that's not true. He says as follows: that which Rava says, he says that you may write a bill of sale for a transaction even on Shabbat, and concludes one may not do this himself, but one may ask a guy to write the bill. Does not apply to ketav ashurit in lashon hakodesh, as that would be the asur d'oraita, can be an isur d'oraita. Rather, it means writing it in other languages, which is only she'enu isur el midrabanan. Shegazer atu gufan shalanu. They made this gezerah of writing in any language, so he wouldn't come to write in our shu katav ashurit o yavanit. So he wants to say that since it's a shvus, the shvus, right? But dvar mitzvah, that's why they allowed the guy to write the bill of sale. Okay, you're right.
You're allowed to buy a company, buy property on Shabbat. And
Right now, I'm not dealing with the property buying. Right now, I'm dealing with the koteb, what's considered writing. I remember, I mean, it's been a while since I looked at it, but that you're allowed to buy from Goyim on Shabbat in Eretz Yisrael because you want to get the land back. So the extent of it, I don't remember. But for the idea of koteb, what we're saying over here for writing, he wants to say the issur of writing on Shabbat is only Hebrew or Greek.
What to
Okay.
write? What to write it?
To write letters. The issur d'oraita of writing letters, writing A, B, Aleph, Bet, right? Not A, B. So alpha, beta, or Aleph, Bet. It's the Greek and the Hebrew. It's only if it's Greek. Now, why Greek? We already saw Masech Megillah that you can technically write a Megillah, and it can be kosher if it's written in Greek. So Greek has some sort of the Reishem, that's the mark. Well, it's still the Rabbanon, 100%. We're saying it's different. Still is the Rabbanon. Now he's trying to qualify what's the Issa Doraita, right? And he's saying it's only Greek or Hebrew. And although Rashi explains one who writes two letters in any language is what's it called, in any script, he says this is shigagahi. It's a mistake because we learned in Yerushalmi that what does it mean? Any language? It means Aleph or Alpha, Beta or Bet, V'hu lashon Yavanit, of a shal lashonot, enu hayav deoraita. So says the Rabbi, the whole issa deoraita is the modern Hebrew, like we have in the scrolls, and Yavanit and Greek. Shulchan Aruch writes, take a look at source 21. Mutter the kanot bayit beretz Yisrael min ha'enu Yehudi b'Shabbat, and the chotem he can sign and he can make the sale in the courts, okay, and record them in the courts. He doesn't write anything about Hebrew, not Hebrew, stuff like that. But the Ramah writes in the courts of the Goyim, shilahem, the Ketav shilahem, the enu isu rak midrabanan, umishum yushav eretz Yisrael loy gazru. So says the Ramah that it is a derabanan to write in any other language, and for the mitzvah to get the land back. So it's what's it called? It's a shvus derabanan for dvar mitzvah, and it would be okay. Okay, the Bir Halacha says that the truth is, he says the Mishnah seems to say any language. And this Ravaya and the Or Zarua, who said it means just Greek or Hebrew, he says it's a very weak because most Rishonim don't agree to that. And he wants to say that the Ravaya and the Or Zarua are a Das Yochid. And so says the Bir Halacha that you should be careful writing in any language is also considered Doraita. However, Chamuvadia, and a source in 23 in the Yebiyah Omer, Chamuvadia says as follows. He says you have many poskim that actually subscribe to this view, that hold like the Or Zarua and the Ravaya, that the issue is really Doraita only on Greek or Hebrew. Therefore, in our case, one would be lenient in a place where it's customary to do so, to employ a non-Jew to write down pledges. Apparently, came a question of Chamavadia. There were certain shuls that when they made the pledges on Shabbat, how much they're going to buy something, or on the Mishaberach, how much they're going to donate, they had a guy writing down. Yeah. So the question came to Chamavadia, can you do that? So he went through the issue, and he said, hey, you have the Ravaya, you have the Or Zarua, and even though the Bir Halacha said there's no one else, Chamavadia had a library of many Sfarim, so he went through all the Sfarim, and he found other Rishonim that agree with them also. There were a minority opinion of Rishonim, the majority of Rishonim said no, but he said because of that, since it's for a mitzvah purpose, so the people should not forget who pledged money, so the Gabbai can come and get the pledges, and save people from pledging and not paying, which is a big problem. So he would allow it. So she'en tzarich levatel minhag b'toikef. You don't have to end this practice. It's not advised in davar kedai lichanes b'riv u'machloikes im gabe b'te knesset hanoigim heter b'zeh. For those who are already doing this. However, the guy that does this, he should do it. Right? Not only see him, he's writing it down. That should not be done on Shabbat. He says, but he can she has because it has a zilzul in kavod Shabbat. Now he says, he already have it for many years. Now, if someone wants to make a new practice now in his shul, now he came then you have to argue them and not let them do this.
What if they want
So
to start?
says no, starting to make you can't do that. If the shul already had the practice of the guy writing down the pledges, they could do it separately in a separate place. No one sees them. And technically, they can write it because the answer to writer is on Greek and or Hebrew, right? And Hebrew. And if he writes it in Arabic or he writes it in Persian or he writes it something like that, it's a derabanan. And what's it called? It's going to be telling him to do it. It's another derabanan. Derabanan by dvar mitzvah, right? It would be permissible, and therefore he will allow them to do it, right, through the guy, and but not to start it as a new practice. Okay, that takes us through the principles of kotev, of writing on Shabbat. The next part of this, and we might not get through all of it. Maybe we get through just the beginning, and the next time we'll pick it back up. Mochek, which is erasing, the Gemara tells us a very interesting difference. Usually we say tying and untying, sewing and unsewing. They're like parallels of each other, back and forth. And although Mochek is also somewhat parallel, you're writing and then you're erasing, and you're erasing to rewrite, there is a difference when it comes to erasing that you don't have by writing. By writing, we say you have to write 2 letters. It doesn't make a difference how big the letters are. You have to have 2 letters. But when it comes to what they call erasing, as follows. Look inside. Source number 24, page 232. Tanu Abanan. כתב אות אחת גדולה, ויש במקומה לכתוב 2, פטור. פטור לא אסר, but I only wrote 1. That's why it's not deoraita, it's only דרבנן. מחק אות גדולה. But what happens if there was 1 huge aleph, and I erased that aleph? ויש במקומה לכתוב 2. And now I have place to write 2 letters. I erased 1 letter. But I have place now to write 2 letters. Hayav. Now I am Hayav Doraita. Why? Because the whole issue with erasing is erasing to write, to make space to write. And in order to make space to write, you have to write 2 letters. So if I erase 1 letter that has space for 2 letters, I am Hayav. Even though when writing, if I write 1 huge letter, it's only the Rabbanan, right? Not the Doraita. Until I actually put 2 letters, but when it comes to erasing, if I erase and you erase 1 letter and there's space for 2 letters there, I have to. Omar Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi, v'zeh homer b'mochek mebechotev. And here you have a stringency by erasing that you don't have by writing. Okay, we'll end up over here. And B'ezrat Hashem, the next time we learn, we will pick up from page 232. B'ezrat Hashem. So next week is going to be Tisha B'Av on Sunday. So we're not going to have the class on Sunday. We'll see how we make it up, whether on Monday or we make it up the week after.
Sunday night is after the fact.
Yeah. You want to give the share? Okay. Shavua Tov L'kulam. Thank you.